Hi, it's Calvin Niles, the mindful storyteller, and I am delighted to share with you stories of awakening. Each week, I'm going to be talking to people from around the world of various backgrounds and experiences. People I love, I know, and people I admire, but also those who are completely new to me. One thing all my guests will have in common is that they have been through a journey of awakening. By awakening, I mean a call to higher consciousness and deeper self-awareness beyond material reality. These stories will be real, challenging, funny, stimulating, and insightful. We're going to take our good time with these conversations. So listen from your comfy chair with your favorite drink, or on your weekend stroll, your morning routine, or whatever makes you happy. Stories of Awakening with me, Calvin Niles, and I look forward to you tuning in. Welcome to a new episode of Stories of Awakening. This conversation is going to be different. It's unique in the sense that this is the first conversation I had in Stories of Awakening for this whole season where I met my guest in person. And I'm delighted to share with you the conversation I had with Cherlene Wilson, a good friend of mine who has a really powerful experience, really unique perspective on her own journey to higher consciousness. But what makes this episode unique as well is that sadly we lost the first few minutes of the conversation. And so this introduction is really to, I guess, contextualize the point at which we jump into the conversation, where Cherlene is talking about her relationship with God, the early concept of who God was to her, all the people that influence that perspective in her life, including her mother.
At the time, I didn't feel like it impacted me because it's my mum, right? You're just going to believe what your mum says to you. But as I've grown up and going through emotional healing and therapy, and just realizing that there was some kind of disconnect in my relationship with God, that was one of the scenarios that came up. There was a conflict because there was the fiction part of me, God's just fictional, but it didn't correlate with the very real experiences that I've been having as an adult. Dreaming today, it's happening tomorrow still, or, things like September 11th, for example, my flight was booked to fly back to the UK from New York, and I heard God clearly tell me to change my flight on the 23rd of August, and I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. Why would I do that? I want to travel. After the third time of God telling me this, I changed it to the 25th of August, and of course we know what happened on September 11th. So I've had many instances where I'm just like, okay, I know that God has to be real, so this fictional part doesn't quite make sense. So it did impact, but I just didn't know that it was impacting at the time. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So that was a big time span there that we just jumped through. So
Yeah.
So just going back to this point around, you thought, hang on, I've got a relationship with God, but my family don't have the language to help me understand some of the experiences I'm having.
Right.
But then you mentioned, you did emotional healing, you did therapy, stuff like that. So what, is that something that you would say was an integral part of your own awakening experience? Or how would you say that related? Oh wow, look at that tree. It just looks...
Majestic.
Yeah, look, I'm just gonna put it on camera. There's a tree here that just sort of standing out. I don't know, something really...
It's really tall as well.
Something really nice about it.
High tree.
Yeah, so how would you say that influenced your own sort of consciousness journey? I mean, you kind of have this man, Jesus, you're already referring to him as somebody who you're connected with. And when did your own language start to evolve to really help you understand?
Yeah. I would say like just being a part of the church and kind of like just learning from those people around me, and inquiring of people like, this happened to me, I was at home and I felt this happening with my body, or like I've been sensing these things, or I'm not hearing voices internally, but I'm picking up on frequencies and things that's being said around me. It sounded very external, and it is very external, because I know that it's not anything that I'm thinking. So just finding people who didn't think I was nuts, like there's something wrong with this person, they've got mental health issues, because they may kind of like associate those types of things if there's lack of understanding.
Yeah.
So just finding people who were having similar experiences, or knew of people that were having similar experiences as me,
Yeah.
was really, really helpful. And I think just as my hearing and my sensing of God has become a lot more acute, I would say that God's also teaching me things as well for me to understand. So,
Hi, if you're enjoying this conversation, you might like SOAR Book Club. Many similar conversations are happening in SOAR Book Club, a book club for the spiritually curious. If you like spiritual books and community, then why not join SOAR, where we can grow together, learn together in a fun and nurturing environment. Click the link below in the description to find out more about SOAR Book Club, or to find out how you can join. It'd be nice to see you there. Yeah.
yeah, it's quite complex
Yeah.
subject, I think.
So you started to find a kind of space, a place for you to feel at home.
Yeah.
Was that the church?
I would say so. Yeah, because it's a community of people,
Yeah.
who are at the very least believing in the same thing, right? In terms of God, Jesus. So I would say that the church definitely helped me.
Yeah.
I mean, we could open that subject. It's a whole can of worms, by the way. It really is, because where there's people, there's mess, right? Where there's people, there's personalities, there's conflict, there's all of those things.
Yeah.
But, like for what I needed in that season of my spiritual development,
Yeah.
like it was absolutely helpful for me. Yeah.
I've got a lot of things bubbling away. I'm trying to order them in my own mind. So, okay. You found your tribe.
Yeah.
And it kind of gave you a safety net, somewhere to belong, somewhere to help you experience the things you were experiencing without the judgment, maybe, of your family, things like that. But of course, where you are today, and I know that your journey has been a long one. I don't know all the parts of it, but I know it's been a long one.
Is that because I'm old then?
I have no idea how old you are. 8 or 9 years old.
Yes.
You had this experience. Can you take us to where that next big experience happened for you?
Like God experience?
Yeah, for you to, whether it's God or whether you call it some other kind of spiritual awakening, whatever language is right for you. Do you remember what happened next? Because you mentioned going through emotional healing, you mentioned therapy.
Yeah.
Was that later? Was that as a young child? Was that as a teenager? Was that part of it? How did that feature?
Yeah, so I think what I'd like to say here, guys, is a little trigger warning for you, because I'm going to speak about sexual abuse here.
Right.
Yep. So that's just a trigger warning, just a little heads up for you guys. So from 8 to 14, like I've left primary school, I've gone to secondary school, and I get introduced to this particular church, and I was going there with a school friend of mine, and I was introduced to the church by her cousin. And while being in this church, there was a guy who took a liking to me, or so I thought, and it turned out that so he basically convinced me that we were in a relationship. And later on I found out that it was definitely not that, and he groomed me into believing that we were in a relationship and that sex was something that we were to do, because he was told this whole belief that we're in this relationship, right?
Yeah.
So although the sexual activity was consensual on my part, he was an adult and I was a minor, so I was 14. And once he had, got what he was after, I became very invisible to him from there on out. And what that did is, of course, as a 14-year-old, it just brought a lot of confusion. I didn't understand what was going on. One minute I had a boyfriend and I didn't. But then I tried to tell the people in this community who were the powerful people, so to speak, the people at the top. And then I was labelled very nastily and made to seem like I was the person that was the issue. And that led me to leaving the church and stepping into gang culture.
Right.
So I abandoned the structure of the church, but I still very much still loved God.
Yeah.
So it wasn't, baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah.
Because
that's what I was actually going to ask you.
Uh-huh.
Because one of the things sort of coming to my mind is that, such trauma and terrible things that you've experienced. Was there any point in there where you sort of were deafened to, you talked about God's voice, God speaking to you.
Sure.
Or were you always feeling and perceiving this greater wisdom and guidance, even through?
Yeah, even through it all, definitely. I would still hear him, for sure. And, I'd be guided and all of those things. So it wasn't, that part of me didn't shut down. In fact, it actually increased at certain, years of my life, certainly when protection was needed, certainly when, I was feeling a lot of emotional pain, I would hear, sense, God. And so dreams, I was dreaming a lot as a kid. This one isn't actually a God dream, guys, but I'll just say my soul dream. Okay, now I'm showing my age now. Knight Rider, that Michael Knight, I promise you, I would dream that him and Kit, right, would drive to my house in Tottenham and take me away, and somehow, like Back to the Future, we would be...
Tottenham, just for the audience, Tottenham is a place in North London.
Yes, Tottenham Hotspurs, the football club, that area, and I believe that somehow, like Back to the Future, Michael Knight was going to transport me to California. I really believed it with my whole heart, that we were going to be driving around the side of cliffs and there was ocean over this side, and I was just in the sun. I would say blowing my hair in the wind, but I don't have any. But when, but it was just really, that was a big dream. Every single day I'd have that dream. That was one of the many dreams that I'd have overnight. So I just wanted to mention that. Right? And I did end up living in California for 5 years, and I had a big deja vu moment, but that's another story. But what was a bit before that? That was a good story.
Yeah, it
guys.
was actually, yeah. And I think every boy thought they were Knight Riders at some point.
You know what happened? Sorry, guys, commercial break. When the Tesla came out, I was so excited. I was like, this is Kit on steroids. Because it is. It can drive on its own. It just can't talk yet.
Right.
But it can drive, and it can sense things. It parks on its own. Like, mate.
Good point.
Yeah, I told you.
Yeah, maybe modelled.
Yeah.
Maybe modelled off Kit.
Yeah, just wanted to say that. Thank you, Elon, for making a dream come true.
So you went through this trauma.
Yes.
And abused by someone who you trusted.
Yes.
And dealing with the fallout of the rejection of the church because they basically blamed you.
Yep.
You fell into gang culture.
Yes, that's where we are.
But can I ask you a question about that? Did you hear God's voice then saying, no, Cece, don't do this? Or were you just living out the trauma, and maybe in some ways you heard his voice, didn't obey, or you didn't hear it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What kind of thing was happening?
In that time, because of the immense level of confusion, And because I mean, this guy made me the focus of his attention. He would pick me up from my parents' house. He would buy me gifts. There was all of this stuff that was happening. So imagine that being intense all the time, and then suddenly it just stops. You're going to be confused. Where he used to save a seat for me on a Sunday for church, he was no longer doing that. He would put his hand down and say, somebody's sitting here. So you can imagine, I'm confused. Like, what happened? Like, I don't understand. I don't understand. So for me, the gang culture part, I found safety there. My cousin was a part of that gang. His friends were. Street code, you're not going to mess about with somebody's relative.
Yeah.
So I felt completely safe in that environment. It was more about the community and the sense of belonging and safety than it was about the crime and the sex and the drugs and the alcohol. It was less about that, even though that was a huge part of the way that we lived. The undertone for me was, these people are safe.
Yeah.
They will protect me.
But of course, at the time, you weren't 100% aware of that.
Right.
You were just living out the experience.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because it's only now as an adult and doing the work that I do with, emotional healing and behavioral personalities and all those types of things, that I can reflect and I can self-analyze and be like, oh, okay, so this is what was happening, this was what was going on, this is, there was pain, you're pacifying pain by drinking alcohol, taking drugs. That I can look back and see what my behavior was like and why it was that way. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah. No,
so
that makes sense. Yeah.
So within that though,
So you started to do a lot of work. So is this where you, is this what led you ultimately to do the therapy and healing work that you are mentioning?
yeah. So it was a journey really, because at 15, I tried to, I didn't think about it. I attempted death by suicide.
Right.
So I overdosed on these pills, and I woke up, and I'll never forget it. I was in the back room of my dad's house, and I had this kind of like white and lilac wallpaper, and like my bed was right behind the door, and I remember waking up, looking at the ceiling, and being so pissed. Why am I still here? I was so angry at God that He didn't let me die. Overdosing on 36 pills, I thought, this is definitely it. The bucket is kicked very, very hard. and clearly not.
I shouldn't even be laughing at it.
But I was just like, the bucket, like, let's just, my attempt was to kick this bucket for real, and it just, the bucket disappeared. So I woke up, looked at the ceiling, and I was so angry with God. Like, why am I still here? And that for me was, I think that in and of itself was a mini trauma for me, because I really wanted out.
Yeah.
But looking back, it was because the pain was so extreme and the confusion was so extreme.
Yeah.
I didn't understand what was going on. But then what happened the year after that, or towards the end of that year, one of the members of the gang went to jail for murder. And that was where the change came for me.
Wow.
I wouldn't say it was...
Well, it shook you up.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
This is a person who, I've been rolling with. And in fact, there was an incident that happened, and I was actually supposed to be there. But I saw a girl on the bus that was going to the house that friends were just hanging out at.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, sorry to cut you, I'm just wondering where we should turn.
It's up to you. I don't care. As long as
Let's
there's
go
no big
this
hills.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to avoid the big hills.
Yes, please. We have me huffing and puffing. Right. What do you want me to pick up?
Yeah, so you saw the girl on the bus.
Yeah. So that was a turning point for me. Like, when that whole scenario happened, it was wild. And I was supposed to be hanging out with the people that they were congregated, like way prior to when this incident happened. But there was this girl who I was just like, oh, I had a little bit of, I was kind of seeing her boyfriend. Like, I was young, don't judge me, guys. Right? And I was just like, I can't sit in the same room as this woman who's going to her boyfriend's house knowing that her boyfriend's not really being faithful and I'm the reason for that. And I was like, 15 at this time? And so I said, oh, I've got to go home. Like, I can't, like, my conscience just wouldn't allow me to just be sitting in front of her face. And I went home. And I went home, I went to sleep, and then the good old phone rang, you know, the one that had that little dial thing that goes round like that. You know, the one that used to kind of Morse code the top if you wanted to, for your parents
Yeah.
lock the phone.
Yeah.
You know, and I got the phone call that this incident happened. And one of the guys ended up going to jail for murder. And I thought at that time, I need to change my life because the culture had consumed me so much that I was not interested in school. I left school with 1 GCSE, and I was just like, I have to change my life because if I don't, and I remember me having this reasoning with myself that if I don't change my life, I could either go to jail. At that time, being pregnant out of wedlock was just not, and especially young, was not the thing. I'm end up either going to be pregnant, dead, or in jail. And that's when I just made the shift.
Yeah. Wow. So this was a rational process for you.
That part was, yeah.
So when did you then start to kind of go, wow, you know, there is so much more happening in my experiences? You know, did you ever start to go, there is more than just this physical reality that I'm living. There's more than just the safety of the gang. There's more than even just the church. Because I mean, I know now of you as somebody who, your church is everywhere you go.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You don't physically feel that you have to go into the traditional confines of a church building.
Right.
So when did your spiritual experience open out beyond those parameters?
It's a tricky one because, so I was living the life of I'm just going to do whatever the hell I want to do. Nobody don't tell me nothing. I'm not interested. This is just me, right?
Yeah.
And that was between 15 and 19.
Yeah.
So in that time bracket, in that 15 to 19 space, I was still very much, you know, doing anti-Christian things, you know, and just living my life. And then I remember one of my cousins, who was probably like the least person you would expect to start going to church, started going to church. I said, oh, what's going on here? Because I was known as the one that was going to church, you know. And excuse me. So she says to me, oh, you know, see, like, just come to church, we're having this thing. Now, I was like, yeah, I don't know. I was always putting it off because I was just like, oh, I'll forget that. And one day I had this dream, and I'll never forget it. It was in 1999. I was 19 years old. So let's do some calculations. You know how old I am now. I had this dream, and my mum and I were in the hairdressers. We was in a place called Walthamstow, which is in East London, in the dream. And we were in the hairdressers, and my mum said to me, the lady who had done my hair had walked out. Now, this is not the character of my mum, by the way, but I'm just telling you what happened.
Yeah.
So my mum said, come, let's go quickly, because the woman's left. The woman's left, come, we can get the hair done for free. So I was like, okay. So I walked out of the shop, and there's like this market in Walthamstow. And there was this woman, she was a heavy-set black woman, big hair. She had a Bible. She was holding her Bible like this, like in her arm here. And she was like, stop. And then there was this earthquake that happened. And
This is all in the dream.
In the dream.
Right.
So the earthquake happened.
Yeah.
And as the earthquake happened, the ground started to shake. And I remember I fell down on my back, and I was spinning in an anti-clockwise way. And I said, God, I'm coming back to you. It was so real.
Oh, wow.
So in this dream, I'm spinning, and it's almost like all of the things that I've been doing. And her Bible, it said Holy Bible on the front. I'll never forget it. It was a big Bible. And she was like, stop. And I started spinning when the ground shook. And I said, God, I'm coming back to you. 2 days later, my cousin asked me to come to church. I went to church and recommitted my life to God. That was in 1999, that was.
Wow.
So that was the next big, you know, thing.
That gave me goosebumps because, I mean, look.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Because those moments, I you know, I'm hearing this consistently on this show.
Yeah.
They're quite profound moments where people get very clear messages. I appreciate, you know, we ascribe meaning, the storytelling mind ascribes meaning, but, you know, someone who I'm very interested in dreams and listening in dreams and interpreting these messages, that's quite profound.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are you were you still a teenager then?
19, yeah.
Yeah, you did say, sorry. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, 19.
Yeah.
So, wow. So you went through, man, you've been through a lot, man.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm still scratching. I haven't got to 21 yet. Wait till I get there.
Yeah. So you go through all of this intensity
Yeah,
as a teenager.
yeah,
Literally sexual abuse,
yeah,
emotional abuse,
yeah,
rejected from the church,
yeah,
gang culture and murders, and all of this is going around all around you.
yeah,
And something deep within you came in a dream
yeah, yeah.
and said, change your life.
Basically, yeah. And it was fascinating because all she said was stop, stop, stop. That was it, 3 things. And I just knew, boom, in my soul what that meant. And when I woke up, the message was so strong and so clear that there was no debating on whether or not I was going to commit my life back to God. I'm making that distinction because I'm not saying I committed my life back to the church.
Yeah.
I committed my life back to God, meaning, you know, I'm not going to be, you know, just having sex with my boyfriend, drinking, smoking. I'm not doing that anymore.
Yeah.
All of those things that were anti, you know, what God would want, how God would want for me to live, right?
Yeah.
So I
And this is God inside of you speaking.
Right, right.
Speaking to you through
To
your
me.
dreams and
Yeah.
all that.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So this is when the church walls came down then.
Yeah,
Pretty
I
much.
think I would say so. Like I did end up going back to the church.
Yeah.
And I'm slightly, my personality is slightly not of a rebellious nature, but I'm definitely going to challenge things. Like I was the kid that was like, well, why is the door called a door? Why couldn't the door be called a car? You know, I was a kid where when my parents would come home, they would see me with a VHS player open with screwdrivers trying to fix it because it's broken. I've always been inquisitive, like curious about things, you know. I've always been that way.
Curiosity, that's another thing.
Yeah.
Comes up a lot in this show.
Always curious. Like, why is this the way that it is? And, you know, just wanting to try and understand that. And as a kid, when you experience these spiritual encounters, you know, this one will sound a little bit bananas, but, you know, as a teenager, I would hear footsteps on my ceiling, and I'll tell my parents, like, look, I can hear footsteps on my ceiling. And they'll be like, my dad said, you know, come on, like, you're crazy, you need to go to the psychiatric ward. And he genuinely, he picked up his shoes and he put on his coat because he's going to take me to St. Anne's, because he was like, this is too much. And I'm like, no, but I'm trying to tell you that this is what's happening, but I wasn't realizing that I had natural hearing, but I had spiritual hearing.
Yeah.
Do you get what I mean? So I'm literally functioning in 2 dimensions at the same time.
Yeah, yeah. So, or different dimensions simultaneously, right?
Yeah.
So do you feel, I mean, I know now you obviously work by helping people to awaken through your bringing your own experience to the fore and showing everybody that they also have the ability to hear, you know, if I use some of the words you use, to hear God's voice, to have spiritual hearing and so on.
Yeah.
But at the time, did you think you were special? Or did you kind of know that, you know, this wasn't a personal thing? Or did you feel like it was a gift that only you had? I mean, I appreciate that you don't believe that now, right? If I'm not mistaken.
No, I think everybody has the ability to hear God.
Yeah.
But I think that everybody has different levels of that hearing.
Right.
So, like, I believe that every single person, and that's whether you're Muslim, you know, Buddhist, Hindu, whatever. And that's my Cherlene Wilson's personal conviction.
Yeah.
That God has created us with the ability to hear Him. You know, whatever religion we choose to subscribe to, that's our personal preference. But within our very makeup, within our very DNA, we have the ability to hear God. Right? So that's what I believe.
Yeah.
And never do I try to impress my personal beliefs or my choice of, in quotes, religion, because I really don't like that word, on anybody else. But this is just how I function, and this is where I find peace and love and, you know, being able to tap into you know, what heaven is saying about myself and what heaven's saying about other people. So
Yeah.
that's just what's worked for me, you know. But I think I want to say this, like, when I turned 21,
Yeah.
that was when, you know, the incident where I told you where God has spoken to me about changing my flight. I was working in New York at that time,
Yeah.
and I heard God very, very clearly tell me to change my flight, which I did. And obviously we know what happened in September 11th.
Yeah.
But there's something else that happened that year. I can't remember if it was before I went away or when I got back, but I got kidnapped when I was 21.
What?
And yeah, I got kidnapped when I was 21. And I remember at this time, I wasn't really developing my relationship with God, because I remember it really clearly, because I thought, oh, maybe this is when I die and maybe I go to hell because I've not been living right, you know. So even though, yes, I recommitted my life at 19,
Yeah, it was
there was
kind
still
of like
some wobbly bits.
Yeah, so it was like an explosion.
Yes.
Of it was a huge opportunity to shift.
Yeah.
A huge wake up moment. To some degree, it did wake you up.
Yeah.
But you were still in a kind of legacy of trance.
Yeah,
in a way.
exactly.
Yeah.
And being connected, because I'm still trying to change my life, because,
Yeah.
you know, here's this girl that left school with 1 grade, you know, had to go to college to go and get more grades. And then the college, I did 2 years in college to get my grades up. And then then doing an access to business and law course that took me into university. So I was the person that was going against the grain of my environment. Because other people were still in drugs, you know, all that kind of stuff. But there was still the comfort of the people that I'd come to love, who protected me from the younger years.
Yeah, so it's, in a way, it's like trying to change a habit, isn't it?
Right,
Yeah.
right, exactly.
Yeah.
So 21, I'm hanging out at my house with my friend, and my other friend calls me up and says, look, you know, her son's unwell. So I said, okay, I'm going to come round, I'm going to bring some Vicks, you know, I can do some Vicks vapor rub, try and get him better. So I said to my mate, you're going to come with me? So he said, sure. So we got in a car, drove down to my friend's house. But on the way, we saw this vehicle. And at that time, gang culture, gang culture. If you saw a car that was written off, it was free reign.
Yeah.
So anything you wanted from that car, you could take it.
Yeah.
Right? That was just the culture. So he saw tires. He's like, oh, I want the tires, you know, and he wants this. I said, all right, cool. You know, when we're on our way back, let's go and get the wheel brace.
Yeah.
Which we did. We got the wheel brace and we came back, and he starts taking off these tires, and something hits me, boom. I'm like, I'm not involved in this. Obviously I knew it was wrong, because everybody would know that it's wrong, but something deep inside of me was just like, you've got to get out of here. But he was busy taking radios and all stuff out of the car, speakers, and I just said, look, I'm not involved. I'm just going to sit in this car and I'm just going to wait for you.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting in the car, and all I heard was, I, and I'm like, oh. And the owners of the car came back, and my friend has bombed it down the road. He's off. And I'm like, crap, what am I going to do? And I remember it was cold, so it's towards December, because I had a woolly hat on with a little bobble on the top. So I'm trying to sink down in my chair, because I'm in the passenger side. So I'm trying to sink down in my chair, because I'm just like, I don't want these people to see me. And my gang culture brain turns on, and I'm like, I just need to get in the driver's seat, and I need to be able to drive, because I used to get away. I used to drive for a crack dealer at one point.
Right.
And I'm just like, I know that I can outrun these people. As long as I get in this driver's seat, I'll be fine. But what happened is, one of the guys came on this side of the car, another guy came on that side of the car, and I'm just like, I am trapped. And then they got another car and they blocked me in. So I'm there, one leg over, those doors opening, and the guy comes in and he's saying to me, oh, you're right. Because I recognize him, because the generation before was him.
Right.
I used to roll on the streets with his brother.
Right. So they were the elders.
So we were the elders. They were the youngest.
They were the youngest. Okay.
So I was like, oh, hey, how you doing? So imagine, I'm sitting in a car. My friends just stole stuff out of his car. And we say, oh, yeah, it's all love. And then he looks in the back of the car, sees his stuff, and he switches.
Yeah.
And he's just like, nah, what? Get out of the car. They put me in this other car, and they drive, and they said they're going to go and shoot me. And I'll never forget it, guys. You can tell a bit about my personality. All I could think about was my nails that I just got done that day. I was like, I need to outrun these people. We got to the place that they took me to. They had me standing outside this house, and I saw like these gates and stuff. And I'm like, I could jump over the gates. I'm really going to break my nails. It's such a, I don't even know what's going through my mind. But I remember the nails that I got done were like purple, and it had like this two-tone purple and these white lines. I was so proud because I got them to design it for me. When these guys said they're going to shoot me, I just thought, come to the end of my life. Don't think God's going to rescue me, because at that time my relationship with God was based on my performance and not from the knowledge, the revelation that God loves me for who I am, regardless of what I do or don't do. So for me, it was just like, mate, this is it, I'm out. Long story short, the police ended up rescuing me from that whole scenario. And I remember going home and I was utterly traumatized, thinking that these people were going to come and find me because their siblings knew where I lived.
Yeah.
Because I used to roll with them. And that for me was, I think, another turning point of, I need to get my life right. I need to stop hanging out with people that could actually cause me to have issues.
Yeah.
And I think it was in going to university, evolving in that space, that it began to just really level me out and start to have vision for my future. Because even at 21, I couldn't see myself living past that age. I'd never been able to dream past it.
Yeah. So how did you, I mean, it's just kind of beyond the awakening part, but I'm just curious to know, now that you talk about getting kidnapped, how did you get rescued?
Oh, okay. So so what had happened is the guy went into the house apparently going to get this gun to shoot me, and he comes back out and he has this sudden change of mind, and he's like, he wants to go back to the car. So they put me back in the car, took me back to where the car was, and they've got me standing on the sidewalk, and this guy has this long spanner. I've never seen a spanner this big before. It was huge and thick, and he was like, he's going to beat me with this spanner. So I just thought, well, if you're going to beat me, just beat me. Because at this point, I'm defeated, innit? I'm in the car. I'm an accomplice.
Oh, so you completely surrendered at that moment.
Oh, yeah, fully. Because I'm just like, well, am I going to fight three people? Yeah. No.
I recognize that,
You know? Yeah. Am I? No way. Now, what happened in my day when I was on the streets, police officers who were undercover, they drove Cavaliers. Vauxhall Cavaliers was their car.
Yeah.
So when this guy is seeing a Peugeot 206 light blue coming past, I'm just like, the guy was like, oh, is that the police? Police. I was just like, oh my God, like I'm going to go jail now. You know? So when he was like, it's the police, and they slowed down, something just rose up inside of me that said, you need to go and get into that car. So I walked over, I said, you're the police, yeah? And they were like, yeah. I opened the car door and I went in, I sat down and I pressed that button down. And I'll never forget it. It was a white male police officer and a black female. And they said to me, get out the car. I said, no, because they're going to take me and they're going to kidnap me again. And I need you to take me home. And they did that. They took me home. And they that for me was the out. They tried to drop me to the top of the road where the guys could still see me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, are you being smart, policemen, or not?
Yeah.
Because they could just run and come and get me again. So I just need you to actually take me to my house, which they did. So I'm grateful to them for that. And that took me out of that scenario. I know, stories that you don't know yet. I know.
So can we go back a little bit?
Yep.
You mentioned.
Yes.
I actually just want to show the audience how beautiful it actually is here. No one around, just us and the trees. So you mentioned something earlier, caught my ear. You said that you had a wobble, and this was before you found sort of love, peace. I think you might have even said harmony, I'm not sure, maybe I might be making that up. But you definitely talked about finding this peace and this love. So at that time, of course, there's still a lot of drama, so to speak, going on around you. When did the peace start to appear for you in your life? When would you say you started to blossom into this peaceful being? I guess you went to uni, you started to change your friendship group, so you were able to start breaking this habit pattern.
Yes.
That you were talking about was so hard to escape, even though you had these moments of insight from God. You know, you need to change, you need to shift. So there's two things I'm hearing. One is your intuition is super, super strong. It's a little bee visiting us. Your
Sorry, I
intuition.
don't do these guys. I'm like,
You're-
yo, I'm from the ends. I know life has changed for me and I now live in Windsor, but still, I'm the city girl.
So you were able to start to make these shifts.
Yes.
So intuition is strong.
Yeah.
And also, you mentioned finding peace. When did that happen?
I mean, we would be jumping a whole nother, 7 years. So 21 was in all the drama was happening, still trying to find myself, all of those things.
Yeah.
And just consciously changing my life. But personal development wasn't as big as it is now then. We're talking like 2001 here, right? So it wasn't like a big deal. It's not like you could, I mean, when did Amazon come? It's not even like you could go and be buying books and learning stuff. Like you're still going to the library with your library card, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But we're jumping like maybe like the real journey of healing and transformation started, I would say, around 24. And that was when I spoke to my godfather and told him what happened to me when I was 14. And he was the person that educated me that I had been raped. Because as far as I was concerned, up until that point, this was my first relationship and it went wrong. I can't tell you why it went wrong, but I just know it did.
Yeah.
So he was the one that switched me on to, baby, you've been raped. I'm like, Dad, come on, I would know that. Come on.
Yeah.
And he said, Google it. So this is, 2004. He said, Google it, find out what statutory rape is. And that started a whole bunch of emotions, rage. There was so much, there was disbelief. Now I'm understanding about manipulation. Oh my God, he took me for a mug. How did I not know this? So I went into a lot of, there was an intense emotional turmoil at that time because I wasn't clear on what had gone on when I was 14, but now there's an explanation here.
So
that
this
was a huge
actually
shift for me.
Yeah, so this actually kind of also kind of highlights the importance of labeling,
Yes.
being able to label things properly.
Yeah.
Because language is limited, but it's
Yes.
also helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when Gotti did that, it was just like, what? And that just got me into this place of just like, it was like my consciousness became awakened to what had happened to me.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm not talking about the God element. I'm just talking about there was suddenly this level of awareness that occurred that helped to explain, for just very minorly what had happened and maybe why I'm experiencing these things that I'm feeling. And I've got into overeating and all of these comforting things that I was doing. That was the beginning. That was the genesis of the change.
Yeah.
And then I would say from that, I had this next experience that same year where I had gone to church, and it was always an effort for me because a part of my escapism of this abuse that happened is I didn't want to be overly feminine. I didn't want to, in my mind, the equation was if my body wasn't attractive, then this wouldn't happen to me. So when it first happened, I used to use silver duct tape and tape down my breasts so that I could look really flat and look like a boy and cut my hair and baseball caps and kind of like walk like a boy and those things so that I wouldn't be attractive. And that evolved into multiple things like comfort eating and, just excessive behaviour, over time. But the part that began to shift things for me was when I had this encounter with a friend of mine where this was the first time I read a book called Understanding the Power and Purpose of a Woman by the late Dr. Miles Monroe. And he was talking about how powerful it is being a woman and all of the things and why God created us this way and, us being incubators and, like men are projectors, women are incubators and we can grow things. And it was just phenomenal, mind-blowing at that age. And the last page of the book, I remember reading it and I heard spiritually these chains drop off. And it was almost like there was scales on my eyes and I heard like on the floor, ping, 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 ping. I'll never forget that. And that happened and it felt like something just broke off my life.
Yeah.
So
it's like when you hear something just opens you up.
Wow, mate.
Transformative.
transformative.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
now,
I completely identify with that.
mate,
Yeah.
even now I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about that. I could just hear ping, ping, ping on the floor.
Yeah.
I was just like, my eyes had been cleared.
Yeah.
It's like an eye wash.
Yeah.
And then I was like, okay, so I need to do this woman thing. Like, so I remember going to Faith's shoe shop. I don't know if you remember Faith Shoes,
Yeah.
right?
Well, no, but yeah.
Right.
I'll just say it's a shoe shop. That's
It's a
good
shoe
enough for
shop.
me. Yeah.
It was a really popular brand back in the day.
Yeah.
Good quality shoes,
Women's shoes.
women's shoes.
Why would I know Faith then?
Because I think, I mean, there was men's shoes in there too.
I'm kidding.
So I got these little kitten heel shoes. 'Cause I'd never worn heels in my life at this point. We're at 24, right, guys?
Right.
So I get these kitten heels, and I'm practicing to walk around in my house. I'll never forget them. They were two-tone, navy blue and grey, and it had these silver studs around the back part. And I remember practicing to walk in these. I found a suit. I went to Fonthill Road. I got a nice suit. I was like, okay, I guess I need to get my hair done because that's what women do. So I had this really nice red hairdo because I'm just extra, you know, like, babe, just be calm. Like, why do you need red hair? So I had this big red hair. And the way that the church was, is the church had, so this is around April now. The way that the church was is you walk through the back doors and then you walk forward to where the pulpit is. And it took me about, I want to say 25 minutes, because it was like I was having this moment of I'm transitioning into accepting that I'm a woman. So I'm walking and I'm stopping and I'm crying because this feels like because I've never ever dressed up ladylike before at this point. And I'm just like, I mean, consciously I'm wearing this to look like no. So I walk in, tears are streaming down my face. I finally get to my seat, and my friend at the time, she said, "Are you okay?" I said, "Yeah, I think I'm all right." It was just like, whew. Now, at the end of church, this guy called Victor is still a very good friend of mine. He's like, "Oh, Shez, you look really nice." Guys, let me tell you, like, I just went ape on him, yeah? You know there's that thing called go ape? I went ape that day. I was like, how dare you stand in the sanctuary of God and lie to me? And you know what? No, my knickers are not gonna fall for you. Mate, talk about issues.
Right. So is that when you knew you had issues then?
Mate, that's when I knew I had issues. Because now looking back, I'm just like, that was completely out. You took it, you blew it way out of proportion.
So you reflected on that. You saw your pain.
Yeah.
Right.
So
this is what led then to doing the therapy.
Right, now this is the next part. So that happened in church. This is around about 2:00. This has happened.
Yeah.
I've gone home and I had a loft bed. I love to tell descriptives because it just brings you into the scene. So I'm in my loft bed, my lovely IKEA silver loft bed, and I'm laying down and I'm jarred because I'm angry that this guy is giving me these compliments and he's lying. You've got an agenda. You know, I'm having this thing. And God says to me, why do you think you responded that way? I was like, I don't know. Having a big full-time tantrum with God. I don't know. And he said, why do you think you responded the way that you did? Like, we need to look into this. And I'm like, God, I don't want to look into this with you. I'm not interested. And he just began to speak to me and he says, I want you to pinpoint where this pain has come from. And that's when I realized that it had come from the abuse. And that was the day that I learned that in my mind, compliments equaled abuse, because that's what the guy did.
Absolutely. It's very clear now that you explain it that way.
Right, compliments equal abuse.
Yeah.
So when this guy, and he's still a great friend to this day, was just doing something nice, I couldn't accept that.
Yeah.
And that's where the journey of my emotional healing started. So that was 24, 27. I went to a leadership school in California where I was able to press pause on life and really just go through counseling, emotional healing, mentorship, all of the things to help me to become the woman that I am today. 5 years of being in an incubator, looking at my life experiences, being able to accept myself, understand my gifting, my spiritual gifting, understanding, my personality type, my propensities, all of the things. I had 5 years to sit without the stimuli of everyday life in London and da-da-da, but just being in this really 15 mile by 15 mile town in Northern California, where the next town over was called Weaverville. And, they'd never seen black people before, so you get profiled.
Did they see weavers?
maybe. Like, this is the area where they're still writing KKK on walls and stuff. Like, but it was just this quiet town that would get to 113 degrees in the summer. You'd burn your feet on the flipping concrete if you weren't careful.
Wow.
But then you could drive 2 hours and you can go skiing and snowboarding. It was a beautiful place.
Yeah, that's the beautiful outback
that's what I learned about
the
redwood
US.
trees. That's how I learned about redwood trees, because that's where they are in California.
Yeah. So, just picking up on, this coming full circle.
Yeah.
Because I'm hearing well, first of all, thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
For sharing that.
Yeah, no worries.
There's pretty intense stuff, and some people on this show, as you would imagine, kind of like traumatic experiences and really deep emotional experiences are so integral to a lot of my guests' own journey of awakening in all the different flavors and colors and guises that it seems to come in.
Yeah.
But some of the things coming out strong for you, I'm hearing, are your intuition is just super strong.
Yeah.
So you have such an amazing gut sense. And I guess God speaks to you through your intuition quite a lot.
100% every day.
Yeah.
Yeah, every day. In fact, go on. I'll let you finish that.
There was only two other things I wanted to say. It was the intuition piece that is very clear to me. And also the surrender piece when you talked about being kidnapped.
Yes.
And in that surrender moment, this kind of reminds me of Lord of the Rings, when they just thought they were about to die. I think it was the Two Towers, because Gandalf had died, didn't he, in the first one?
Yeah.
And if you know the Lord of the Rings,
he loves his movies and his Amazon shows and Netflix shows.
And it was like, right, Saruman's going to defeat us.
Yeah.
And just as the sun was about to rise, they looked to the east and they remembered Gandalf the White. Well, that's when Gandalf the White appeared. And it was in that moment of, this is the end. There's no more we can do.
Yeah.
So there's a surrender thing. It's so powerful. And then, of course, you mentioned the last thing was acceptance. And these are things I pay attention to.
Yeah.
This language I like to personally use.
I love that.
But yeah, I just wanted to thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
And I know you're gonna say something a second ago, but that was all I wanted to just really say is, thank you for joining me in the forest. And bringing the audience a new kind of different experience in the forest. This is the usual forest that I come to, but I've never done.
He got me into it as well, guys. So I'd bring my friends here now.
I've never actually done the Stories of Awakening here, so thank you. And that's just all from me. Hopefully we do another one in future.
Yeah.
But yeah, is there something you wanted to say there? I didn't want to leave it unsaid.
I was going to say, just because I know that we have, spoken some pretty deep topics, suicide attempts and, emotional healing and sexual abuse and all of those things. I just think it's really important to say, if that's something that you've struggled with, or you're still having those types of feelings or thoughts, or, you kind of feel like your childhood trauma is actually impacting the way you do adult life. I just really want to encourage people to just get the help that they need. Because it was when I chose to look at my darkness, that period of time being in California for the 5 years was really about me just looking at that, confronting the darkness, being face to face with that, that I was able to really accept this is what's happened in my life. I can't change the past, but I can implement things that can help me change the future. And I think if you hear my story in detail, because this was just skimming the surface, you can see that there's so much victory in the story, but that came by way of emotional healing. Do you know what I mean? That it came because I chose to confront the darkness. I chose to own my story. I chose to, even reframe it and to share it in a way that is sharing from from a scar and not from the actual wound. So I think I just want to say, like, the process, it might be long, but you know, like, every journey started with the first step. So I just really wanted to encourage people, you know, if this has left you kind of feeling a little bit wobbly, you know, please do get the help that you need. There's therapists out there, there's emotional healers, there's all different types of healers. Just make sure you go and see someone, please. That's it for me.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And
Thank you for having me.
see you on another episode of Stories of Awakening.
Bye, guys.
Bye for now. What is most meaningful for you in 2022? Is it healing and forgiveness? Is it love and belonging? Or maybe it's the courage to be and to act. SOAR Book Club has all of this for you. If you want to read more and need accountability to keep you moving forward in your already busy life, are you looking for inspiration to develop your spiritual awareness? Maybe you want to be part of a positive community during these uncertain times, or connect with like-minded people who love stories and books. Then join SOAR Book Club. Hop on board. The train is about to leave the station, and I would love to have you on the journey with me. So click the link below to join. That's SOAR Book Club with me, Calvin Niles. I hope to see you there.